Sunday school's done, we can have a meeting. Okay? Hopefully they all show up. Okay, all right. But chapter 3 here in this book changes the subject a little bit. It's still about church health, church growth, things like that. But it talks about the leadership of the church. And it's talking specifically about the spiritual, emotional well-being of the leadership. Now, when you talk about leadership of a church, that's obviously the pastor is the leader, the deacons, the elected officials, teachers, workers of any kind. And I would expand it a little bit. It didn't necessarily have this in the book, but I would say any one that goes up on stage is a leader. They're a leader. So the spiritual health of our congregational leaders often determines the health of the church itself. Now, you know this is true because of many high-profile leaders, right, that make a mess of things in their church. We tend to hear about those. Like we said last week, if a church gives $150,000 to hurricane relief, we never hear about that. But, if a deacon messes up or a pastor messes up or the music director messes up, it's all over the news 24/7, right? So you hear about those things. Here's just a few that I've heard about. In Seattle, there was a church of about 20,000 people that essentially broke up because the pastor was accused of caustic leadership, and he had fired some other associate pastors without cause. So he was asked to leave the church, and the multi-site, multi-campus church ended up essentially breaking up. And I don't know if each site more or less had to start their own church with their own group that was there, but a big mess. In Chicago, another pastor was caught on video yelling at students in a class and mistreating staff. And apparently he snapped. It was kind of like he broke with reality. I watched some of those videos, and he had tons and tons of sermons online, teaching online, all kinds of things. I had been to churches where they actually broadcast him up at the front. But the church significantly dropped in attendance, and they had this massive building, incredible campus, and they're struggling to pay for it all when you lose about 5,000 people, right? So the health of the leaders matter. Then there are other examples of unhealthy leaders hurting their churches immensely. There's all kinds of examples, but there's also countless examples of healthy leaders that are living healthy, doing spiritually well for years and years and years, working without notoriety, right, leading God's people. But who do we hear about? The ones that mess up. So today we're going to try to talk about what burnout looks like, what an unhealthy, unproductive spiritual life might look like, and then how we can help with that. So if somebody could read 1 Corinthians 15, verse 57 and 58. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 57 and 58. Somebody could read that verse. Appreciate it.
But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain.
So leaders in the church, workers in the church of all kinds, like I say, even somebody working in the nursery, even, the fellows back in the sound booth, we all need to realize that our labor is not in vain, right? It may seem difficult, it may seem hard, but we are working for the Lord. Now, that gets a little bit muddied up sometimes or cloudy in our heads because who do we see? It's a bunch of people who have what in their lives? Sin, right? We're not perfect, right? So we mess up, we step on toes, we hurt feelings. But that labor is not necessarily for them. It is for the Lord. It's for His honor and glory. And He wants us to keep working. And we have to remember that all our efforts is not in vain. You know, even if you just come up here and my famous example, I mean, I've said this story probably more than once, was even if you're just coming up and filling up the pop machine, right? Opening up the boxes and putting in the pop, loading up the machine. And a guy told me, he's like, that sounds like work, right? Well, it is work, but all ministry is work. And our labor is not in vain because it is for the Lord. And I think if we keep that in the back of our heads, in the back of our minds, it assists us in moving forward for God's glory, right? So 1 Corinthians 15:58, it's probably a verse that we should commit to memory to help us. But leaders and workers of all kind need to know that their labor is not in vain. And but we need to be on the lookout for burnout. We need to be we need to be on the lookout for burnout, because rarely will a person come to you and admit they're burning out. I remember one lady in 20 years of ministry came to me crying, laying her head on my shoulder, just hugging me, weeping, "Pastor, I'm burnt out, I'm done, I don't know what to do, I want to do ministry and I want to work for God's glory, but I just can't do it anymore." Like I say, one time in 20 years. How many others in that 20 years just quit, walked away, couldn't do it anymore? I remember I was young in ministry, and there was a couple, speaking of junior church, there was one couple that was teaching every week, junior church. That's all they did. They never went into a service. And I went to them, I'm like, you need to be fed yourself. Should you at least come to Sunday school or maybe Sunday night? They never did. They always had an excuse. Then they were all, I'm like, can you get some other people? You like create a schedule so that you can sit in church? Oh no, this is what we do, junior church. Well, it didn't take very long, right? And they got tired of that and burned out at the end of the rope. They weren't getting fed themselves, right? And maybe I was too young in ministry to really recognize and force them to do that. But people burn out and nobody wants to ever tell you. I remember another time I sensed, maybe it was my more experience, because I was older at this point, and I took breakfast over to somebody's house and sat down and said, "Let's talk. Did you eat breakfast yet today?" "No, I haven't eaten all day." And we talked about it and we figured it out, because people don't normally tell you that they're burning out. So there's some ideas on how to see it, recognize it, so that you can help people make adjustments. So the author gives a list. How to tell if a leader or a Christian worker or just a Christian brother or sister, right, if they're burning out. Number one, their motivation is fading. Their motivation is fading. Their passion or their desire is gone. Now, oftentimes they are still motivated to work. They're still motivated to serve, but their reason for serving has shifted, right? Instead of a desire to bring glory to God, they want to keep doing that job for some selfish reasons, right? I don't know if you've ever seen that or have experienced that in your life, but their motivation is fading. Number two, their main emotion is numbness. They no longer feel highs, they no longer feel lows, they're just kind of existing. All right, sign of burnout. Number three, people drain you. You want to be alone, you want to avoid people, which isn't what ministry is supposed to be, right? But sometimes you get in ministry and it's people. How many pastors have you heard say stuff like that? "Oh, ministry would be great if it wasn't for people." And it's kind of a joke, but it makes you wonder. I've always wondered, like, the people that say that, I wonder, what is going on for them to say that out loud? Like, you've gotten so burnt out to the point where you are willing to just say that out loud? People drain you. Number 4, little things make you disproportionately angry. Does that make sense? Little things make you disproportionately angry. Like, one of my pastor mentors, Pastor Henke, he told me one Sunday morning, a lady came up to him 5 minutes before church and said, "I need to talk to you in your office." And he thought it was just going to be something terrible, right? And he says, and she slams the door and says, "I've seen cobwebs in the hallway." And he's like, "Okay, show them to me." So they go down, and he walked 5 more feet. There was a little closet, and he grabbed a broom, and he handed it to her. And he said, "Next time you see the cobwebs, there's the broom so you can knock them down." Right? If something as simple as cobwebs gets you all hot and bothered, where you got to be yelling and screaming and slamming doors, you might be close to burnout. There might be some other emotional or spiritual problem. If you start losing your cool over small things, it's a sign of a deeper spiritual issue, right? If you're becoming cynical, and I've seen that. I've seen preachers get cynical. I called a pastor friend one time, actually right before I was thinking about coming into this ministry, and he's like, "Don't do it. Don't do it. Ministry's just hard and miserable and terrible." I'm like, I can't believe you're telling me not to do it. But that guy, to me, he struggles with being cynical and has for years and years and years, and I've seen it. Maybe your productivity is dropping, or maybe you self-medicate in some way. The author gives a list of ways people self-medicate by overeating. Have you ever seen any extremely beyond reason obese preachers? You ever seen one like that? That you're just like, this just doesn't look healthy. And you wonder why that happened. Food is a drug of choice for many Christians. Maybe your drug is gossip. Oftentimes when we feel bad about ourselves, we say bad things about others. Maybe it is spending. The author says retail therapy. The grass is always greener on the other side syndrome. Maybe there's some other hidden agenda. We're trying to, today, for those that are just arriving, we're talking about church health, and we're going through a book about church health. And this chapter is all about recognizing burnout. And hopefully we're going to learn to avoid it, right? Because our labor is not in vain. 1 Corinthians 15:58. So your motivation is fading. Your main emotion is numbness. People drain you. Little things make you disproportionately angry. Number 5, you don't laugh anymore. Nothing seems funny. You can begin to resent people who enjoy life. That's a pretty bad place to be. There's definitely people in the Bible that have got to that point where they're burnt out. Elijah comes to mind, right? He didn't want people to feel good. He didn't feel good himself. Jonah, I would say he was there emotionally burnt out. He's mad about the bush dying, but he doesn't care about 200,000 people being killed. Right? So that's just a bad place to be. Number 6, when sleep doesn't seem to help. A good night's sleep or a week's vacation usually helps. It usually helps people bounce back. But if a month off doesn't help, maybe you're getting burnt out. One megachurch pastor wrote an entire book about his experience with emotional and spiritual burnout. His name is Perry Noble. He, in this book, he said that he never rested. His church was growing, and when a church grows, everything grows, right? Including what? Problems, criticisms. They all grow. And he buried his criticisms with more work. He points out that overwork is the most rewarded addiction in our culture. That people will praise you for working hard. Quote, they will sing your praises right up until you get into the coffin, and then they'll forget about you. End quote. He said the irony of it all is that we are often more creative when we are having fun and taking time off. Isn't that interesting? I know I've told this story before. We hadn't had VBS here at this church in a few years, and lo and behold, I end up in a pool in Florida with Pete, and we start talking about VBS, and it ended up hatching, a plan to have the high school students be the VBS workers, and we did that for the last couple of years, right? We've worked with each other, we've done things with each other, and it was in a pool, relaxing, that we actually came up with a good idea. So it would have been easier, I think, to skip this chapter out of all of them. It's like, I could probably skip this and get away with it. No one would know. But I didn't want to do that, because I guess I wanted to say this. If you are feeling burnout, I want you to know you're not alone. People in the Bible have gone through it. People in my 20 years of ministry have gone through it. And we have pride telling us that we can handle it by ourselves. You'll be fine. Push through it. You'll get over it. Or fear keeps you from being honest and open about it, right? I don't want people to think that I'm going through this. One pastor in the book said that he had struggled with pornography when he was younger, and he admitted that, and he got it out in the open, and he healed from that. And he said he was more afraid to tell people he was burnt out than he was addicted to porn. And that just seems wild, right? But there's that stigma there. We don't want to tell people about that. And many Christians have faced burnout. Many ministry workers have faced it. But remember, right, we are in this for the long haul. We are laboring for the Lord, right? Our labor is not in vain. So maybe you're thinking, well, Pastor, I'm not burnt out. But maybe it could be around the corner, right? So how can we stay spiritually and emotionally, mentally healthy? Okay, this is maybe where you want to write a list, okay? There's how many things we have here. How can we stay spiritually and emotionally healthy? Number one, a daily time with God in the Word. A daily time with God in the Word. Talk to a lot of people, they have a goal of reading through their Bible in a year. It's not really that difficult. They have Bible apps where you can look at your phone and read through it and get through the Bible in a year. I mean, you can scroll through shorts and TikToks and everything else and figure out, I just spent 45 minutes doing this. Reading 4 chapters a day in order to get through the Bible in a year, that's not going to take you 45 minutes. Maybe you're like, that sounds too overwhelming. They have other devotionals, Bible apps, or you can just read a chapter. I've known people that are like, what do you want me to read today? And they like flip it open and put their finger on it. I'd rather have you do that than nothing. I have a little bit different way that I do my devotions. I kind of get deep studies, but I keep thinking maybe I should just read for the sake of reading and read the Bible through in a year. Just start at the beginning and do it. Because I always have these in-depth studies, and I'm searching things, and I'm looking at things, and I'm listening to sermons. But whatever it is, just be in the Word. Whatever works for you, be in the Word every day. That's going to help you stay strong emotionally, spiritually. That's where you're going to be at the best place of health, being in the Word every day. Number 2, he writes, exercised Find something that you like to do. Find something that you like to do, get in a routine, and do it. Now, for me, I like weightlifting. I don't like running. I don't like running. There's some people that go into the gym and they go on that stair machine. They go on the treadmill and they just walk for 30 minutes and then leave. In the wintertime. Sure, in the summertime they're outside. If you like walking, if you like jogging, if you like weightlifting, if you like Rumba, or what are those called? Zumba? Rumba? Zumba. Whatever you like, do it. But the Bible says bodily exercise profits little. You remember that verse? Bodily. And people always like, oh, it's not hardly worth nothing. But if you read it and really think about it, the idea is it does give you some benefit, right? What gives you the most benefit? Your daily time with God, that's the most important. But, we do need to stay active. We do need to stay active, physically active. That's going to give us to the best place of health. Number 3, a healthy diet. Don't eat too much. Maybe get rid of processed foods. I've had people tell me testimonies. They're like, I quit drinking pop and I lost 30 pounds. I'm like, that's all you had to do? Wow. So a healthy diet. Number 4, get proper sleep. Get proper sleep. Now that's difficult for some people, but it helps. Get proper sleep. Number 5, take time off. Take time off. There's one fella I'm thinking about in my ministry. He came to me and his eyes were like, how some people are like pegged open all the way, and he's like totally tense. He's like, I've worked for 93 days in a row. I'm like, hey, maybe you need to calm down and take a couple days off. Well, my goal is to work super hard all summer, and then I want to go to Florida for a month in the winter. I'm like, I don't know if it's worth it. Like, you look unhealthy. So take time off. Number 6, have friends who don't need you to minister to them. Have friends that can minister to you. Have friends. Number 7, don't get to the end of your rope, mentally, physically, emotionally, which all cause even more worry, right? Don't get to the end of your rope. Don't get to the end of your rope financially. Don't put yourself in a position where I have to, right? Don't get to the end of your rope. Number 8, have a hobby. Have a hobby. My wife, she's like, I hate cutting wood. I don't know why you like to do that. It's so much work. And it's like, I kind of actually like it. I like getting outside in the winter. Especially out in the woods. It's a lot funner when you're in the woods. And you're cutting stuff, and it's just fun. To me, it's a fun hobby for me to do in the winter. It's a good thing. Find what you like to do. I've met Christians who didn't have any hobbies. I've met people, I don't have any hobbies, I don't have anything. Well, you have to have something. Let's figure this out. What do you like to do? What are you doing that's... Number 10, the last one here. Maybe counseling is needed. Maybe counseling is needed. Now, I'm a pastor. I can talk to you about anything, and I will not tell people. I mean, unless you tell me you got like a body buried in the backyard or something, then I will call the police. But I don't spread things around. I've had people tell me some crazy stuff. It's like, I didn't go, hey, Rachel, do you know what, Dawn told me? I don't do that, okay? Sometimes I do need help, Like, so maybe I'll ask vaguely, for some help, or what should I do? I try to keep that, really tight-lipped. However, I have gone into situations of counseling where I've counseled somebody for several weeks and I really wasn't getting anywhere, so I referred them to some other place. There are counseling places available. There's counseling online that they have a lot of places. So like, if you can't get down to that facility, they have online counseling. There's great marriage counseling in Lapeer. That's actually totally free. There's a lot of counseling. If I can't help you, I will help you find a counselor that will help you. But as a church family, we need to be open and honest about our spiritual and emotional health, because we have to remember we are family. So we should care about one another, and this place ought to be a safe place, without fear of being bullied, without fear of being ridiculed, without fear of being cut down. And I tell that to the teens, and we tell that to the teens periodically. We have to tell that to the children, but I don't think that sometimes it doesn't get said in this group very often, right? We ought to be a safe place. I mean, we know at the secular world, we're going to be exposed to a bunch of nonsense. People are going to make fun of us at our work, at school, wherever it is. We have to know that when we come here, we're going to be loved, right? And we should all want to help, because we're on God's mission of reaching the lost, right? That's the mission that God has given us. So we should want everybody to be healthy spiritually speaking. So I do have some discussion questions. I talked quite a bit there. So I have 4 discussion questions. We have about 10 minutes left. 10 minutes left. So, have you ever been in a place where a leader burned out, and what happened? Have you ever been in a place where a leader burned out? What happened?
Been in the church, and the thing that happened was all he did was read his sermons, and then he didn't care anything about the people.
What happened there?
Some of the people started to leave, but there was a group of men who got together and talked to him about it, and it was changed, and it turned around.
Good. So something positive happened. Yeah. Good. Anybody else?
I just know of a couple, but I wasn't there. My parents' church, Pastor Ross and his family, they decided to take us back, but they admitted that they needed that, and they were gone for, I don't know, at least a month, maybe more. And Wesley in here, a few years ago, they did the same thing. They weren't sure if they were going to stay, but they did come back and stay, for like 5 more years.
Yeah.
It helped them. They called it a sabbatical, but it's like they went to another state for a long time.
Yeah. And there, I heard of one pastor. This was a number of years ago over by Flint. He actually had a nervous breakdown in the pulpit, and stepped down, from the pulpit. And then they ended up helping him and, provided a way for him to retire. He was 65 or something like that. Anybody else ever been in a situation where a leader burned out, and what happened?
That happened to me when I was at First Baptist Church. I was in charge of 4 different things, and I was going up to the church to go to church. I don't know if you remember this or not. This guy was a member of the church, had been there a long time, and he approached me, very upset, and he said, "I want to know who's in charge of the buses." And I took my keys and I handed them to him, and I said, "You are as of right now." And I walked away. So that freed me up.
Yeah.
And that no more problem with the buses.
Yeah. That might not be the best way. But it is a humorous way anyway. All right, number 2. Are healthy leaders a goal in our church? Are healthy leaders a goal in our church? Any thoughts on that?
I guess this would fit under here. At a former church, a lady was turning 80 years old, and she had taught junior church and Sunday school for probably 60 years. And she said, I just, don't feel healthy enough to keep on doing this anymore. So I had a big, retirement party for her, and it was all good. And another lady had taught preschool. She was probably 90, and that was her passion. She loved to teach preschool, and as far as I know, she did it till she died.
Yeah. There was a lady in my old church, she was 90 something, and she had severe arthritis to, where your fingers are all, have you ever seen anybody? Their fingers are all bent. And I went and seen her, and she's like, "Pastor, I'd love to be on the nursery schedule." We had a hard time finding people to fill the schedule, and she's like, "I'd love to be on it, but I just don't know if I can hold those babies." And she held up her hands, and I was thinking, I know you can't do it. I don't look down on you. But in the back of her mind, she wanted to do work, right? She wanted to do it. So yeah, a healthy leader's a goal in your church. Number 3, what can you do to promote health in your church's leaders? What can you do to promote health in your church's leaders?
Going back to the former question, is it a goal? Well, obviously none of us want unhealthy leadership, but if it's truly a goal, then you have to have steps in place to make that happen. Because, with anything, if you say, well, I want to do such and such, well, you have if I say I want to do such and such a thing, that's a goal, but I don't put steps in place to make that happen, it's not a goal. It's just something that I say because, that's a good thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
So as we look at this, and if something truly is a goal of myself personally or a group that I'm involved in, there has to be steps in place to achieve that to where we can get to the end goal.
Mm-hmm. Good thought. Very good.
Maybe you need to have a motivational meeting or a brunch or something with these, with these leaders once in a while to motivate people and encourage people, or individually you can thank somebody, I see you're doing a really good job doing that, or, send them a note or a text or just something to encourage people, because they probably feel like nobody cares and why should I keep doing it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Last question. What can you do to help someone right now? What can you do to help someone right now? Maybe you can't answer that out loud, but yeah. I remember one time at my old church, I did a dinner similar to what she's talking about. Anybody that had done ministry, and I had 2 choices, steak or chicken, so you could sign up. And I grilled all the steak and chicken, and somebody that came to that complained that the chicken was too dry. I threw this meeting. So then the next year when I did the ministry appreciation dinner, it was all steak. Right? But that's definitely a thought. Definitely, we definitely appreciate anybody that works around here, and maybe just have a dinner for them and talk anyway, encourage them. So, anything else before we wrap it up? Let's pray. Father God, thank you for this